I never told my wife how much money I had because I wanted love without numbers. That silence worked.
I never told my wife how much money I had. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because I wanted something pure. I told her I worked in consulting. Nothing too impressive, just enough to live comfortably. She accepted that version of me so easily. Maybe a little too easily in hindsight. So we built a life on that foundation, a modest life. A small apartment, an old car that always seemed to be on its last legs, and simple, predictable routines. I watched her clip coupons and meticulously plan our budget down to the last penny. And I just played along. I went with it, even though I knew a single phone call could erase every financial worry we had. I told myself it was a noble experiment, a way to protect our love from the corrupting influence of money. I thought that if I introduced it too early, it would poison everything we were building. Her father, however, never bought into the act. He was everything I wasn't: loud, flashy, and obsessed with status. Every family dinner felt like an interrogation, an interview I was destined to fail over and over again. He didn't just disapprove of me, he openly called me a disappointment. He saw me as the man who was dragging his precious daughter down into a smaller, less significant life. My wife would always defend me, bless her heart, but I could see her confidence waver a little more with each of his verbal attacks. It was like watching a dam slowly crack under pressure. But there was a secret, a massive piece of the puzzle that none of them knew. I quietly, anonymously, owned a significant share of her father's company. This wasn't something recent. Years before I even met her, I had made a series of shrewd investments, slowly and discreetly increasing my control. It was never personal. It was just business, a detached, clean, and profitable venture. The lie went on for far longer than it ever should have. Years passed. And with each passing day, the weight of this secret grew heavier. Every time my wife expressed a worry about bills, every time she decided to skip buying something she really wanted just to save a few dollars, the guilt tightened its grip around my chest. It felt like I was suffocating, yet I remained silent. I kept the charade going, convinced it was for the best. The breaking point finally arrived, as it always does. It was at another tense family dinner. Her father waited until dessert, the perfect moment for a public spectacle. It was a low-level position, with a salary he smugly described as generous. He announced it loudly, proudly, as if he were single-handedly rescuing his daughter from a life of poverty he believed I had forced upon her. I looked across the table at my wife. She was waiting, her eyes locked on mine, waiting for my response. And in that single, gut-wrenching moment, everything became crystal clear. My silence wasn't protecting our love anymore. It was actively poisoning it from the inside out. But I didn't get angry. I didn't raise my voice. I asked if he happened to know who controlled the block of votes that had been consistently blocking his recent expansion plans. He laughed at first, a dismissive, arrogant laugh. But then his expression changed. The smile faded as he realized I wasn't joking. And then I told him everything: the money, the anonymous investments, the controlling shares in his company. The lie, the entire, complicated, ugly truth came spilling out. The room, which had been buzzing with his self-congratulation, collapsed into an unnerving silence. Her father stared at me, his face contorted with a look of utter betrayal. That look, that sense of alienation, hurt more than all of her father's insults combined. She left that night. She packed a bag and walked out, leaving a void that felt bigger than any fortune. The fallout was brutal. There were so many sleepless nights where I just replayed that dinner over and over in my head. I signed them away without a fight. I never wanted power over her family. That was never the point. All I wanted was honesty, even if it had arrived disastrously late. Weeks later, after the storm had calmed slightly, she agreed to meet me. We sat in a quiet cafe, the air thick with everything left unsaid. I braced myself for the anger, for the screaming, for the insults I knew I deserved. But none of that came. She didn't scream. She didn't call me names. She just looked at me with this profound sadness and asked one question. Just one. She asked why. Because there wasn't one. Nothing I could say would justify the years of deception. We didn't get back together. Trust isn't like a broken bone that just heals once you set it straight. It doesn't magically reappear just because the truth is finally out in the open. But we did learn something valuable from the wreckage. We learned how to speak to each other honestly, even when it was painful. We chose peace over control, truth over secrets. I lost a marriage that day at the dinner table. But in a strange way, I also gained something. I stopped living a lie. And as I started to rebuild my life, I realized that for the first time in years, that feeling of authenticity, of being truly myself, felt like real wealth. Thank you for listening.